Hi everyone, welcome to API authentication with Apache APISIX and Okta video tutorial. My name is Bobur, I'm a developer advocate. Today we'll cover how to utilize Apache APISIX OpenID Connect plugin for Okta as a centralized authentication. This video tutorial also contains some conceptual introduction of Apache APISIX and Okta. It also provides some step-by-step instruction on how to set up Apache APISIX OpenID Connect plugin and how to configure Okta. So, with that plan, let's get started. Apache APISIX is a dynamic, real-time, high-performance API gateway. It provides a rich traffic management features, and the project offers many stuff like load balancing, dynamic upstream, circuit breaking, security, authentication, observability, and many others. And the gateway supports also dynamic plugin changes along with hot plugin support, and APISIX has many built-in plugins. At the same time, you can also develop your own custom plugins for API gateway. Okta is a customizable, secure, and drop-in solution to add authentication and authorization services to your applications. You get scalable authentication built right into your application without the development overhead or security risks or maintenance. You can connect any application in any programming language or on any stack to Okta and define how you want your users to sign in. Each time a user tries to authenticate, Okta will verify their identity and send the required information back to your app. OpenID Connect is a centralized identity authentication mode. By using OpenID Connect, is that users only need to register and log in with one OpenID Connect identity provider's website and use a single account's password information to access different applications. Okta is a common OpenID Connect identity provider, and on the other hand, Apache APISIX OpenID Connect plugin supports it. As a result, OpenID Connect plugin for Apache APISIX allows users to replace the traditional authentication mode with a centralized identity authentication mode via its plugin. Let's have a look one use case scenario. Authorization flow is divided into three stages: sign in, access, and session flows. As you can see on the first diagram, it shows sign in flow. The client service requests access to the APISIX API gateway first, and then APISIX initiates an authentication by redirecting client request to the identity provider. In our case, it is Okta. The user logs in and authenticates on the Okta, and then Okta IDP returns Apache APISIX API gateway with the authorization code and redirects the client request back to the APISIX. At this stage, no access provided to the service, let's say upstream service, without authentication. In the next flow, access flow, as you can see, APISIX requests the identity provider Okta, and with the authorization code extracted from the previously request as a parameter, then the Okta sends answer message to APISIX with ID token and access token. APISIX sends access token to the Okta user endpoint for authentication. After passing this authentication, Okta sends the user info back to APISIX to complete the authentication. Finally, APISIX passes user info to upstream services. Inside the service only accepts connections from API gateway, and upstream services should be able to handle user info and able to get the user info from the header. And through the session flow, we can assume that up to now authentication has already happened, and in the later stages the client application can request directly APISIX without let's say duplicative verification with Okta by using access token. that received in the previous stage. And until the request session expires, it can be used. However, as I mentioned above, the upstream services should be able to handle custom header with access token user info. Here's the major benefits of using centralized authentication. It simplifies application development process because it alone interacts with identity provider and alone has to know how to deal with authentication logics by avoiding need to repeat the development of authentication code for each application. Centralized authentication mode also improves business security. At the gateway level, it can intercept unauthenticated requests in time to protect your backend applications. And also it can unify custom configurations. It means we don't have to define our access controls and all other consumers over and over in the API gateway, and all the systems that we have instead are centralized. For example, if someone leaves the company, we can go to one place and say, well, all the access that person has now is gone. Okay, with all the foundation out of the way, let's now go and do a demonstration. The first thing, you make sure that APISIX installed. You can find on the Apache APISIX official website several ways of how you can install Apache APISIX. In my case, I am running it via Docker. I have on my Windows machine Docker desktop installed. As you can see on the Docker desktop, I have Docker APISIX container is up and running with all the necessary packages inside. Secondly, I can assume that you have Okta account. If you go to the official website of Okta, you can try to create Okta account and maybe experiment with free trial and check if you have access to your admin account, and if you go to your personal account and press admin, you need to of course authenticate first and log into the Okta admin console. Once you log in via two-factor authentication, you can see the Okta dashboard, and from there you can go to applications and applications page. Then click create app integration to create new Okta application. So for the selection option, for the sign-in method, I can right away choose OpenID Connect because we are using Apache APISIX OpenID Connect plugin to integrate with Okta. For the application type, you can choose web application. That's kind of your server-side application, and click next. On the next page, you can give application integration name. I can give a name like Okta example, and then another section we need to pay attention is when we are setting the URL for login and logout. Sign in the redirect URLs are links user can go to after successful login, and on the other hand, sign out redirect URLs are links user when goes to somewhere after the successful logout. In this example, we can set both sign in and sign out fields redirect to the URLs of our Apache APISIX server. In my case, following address, we can specify trusted origins. We can leave it as empty. The next, for the controlled access, we can click for the demo purpose, just allow everyone in our organization to access. After finishing the settings above, we can simply click Save to save the changes. So here we go. On the General tab of the application recently created on Okta, we need to obtain the following configuration, which is required to configure Apache APISIX to OpenID Connect, such as client ID and also client secret and Okta domain. Later, we will use these configuration parameters on our route configuration when we set up plugin for Apache APISIX. Now on Okta side, everything is ready, and we can jump into now Apache APISIX OpenID Connect Plugin configuration. To do that, we can once again revisit the Apache APISIX official documentation. If you go to Apache APISIX plugins, under authentication, you can find OpenID Connect. With the help of OpenID Connect, we can provide central authentication with integration of many identity providers like Okta. There are some plugin configuration options you can refer to. If you little scroll down to the section how to set up, you can see here the example. It is a general example how we can enable the plugins, OpenID plugin for the given upstream. In this example, we are creating a new route, let's say for this URI, to configure the OpenID Connect plugin. I can now show you some field information, how we can reuse OpenID Connect to set up it for the Okta. Basically, we need to define first route and configure some OpenID Connect plugin parameters, like here. We need from Okta client ID, as if you come back to the previous page on Okta page, we need this client ID be mapped to this client ID on plugin configuration, and similar to the client secret from OpenID Connect should be specified. One more attribute we need definitely is redirect URI. It's not listed here, but if you go up and check the documentation, there is also the option for redirecting the URI. By default, it will be the nginx var request URI, but you can also specify your request. Now let's jump into our favorite command line terminal and try to run the following curl command. I'm going to explain each of the configuration right now. Basically, we are creating new route by triggering the admin API routes configuration, and we are configuring OpenID Connect plugin over there. And this code example creates a route via the Apache APISIX admin API and sets an upstream path to http.org as its simple backend service for receiving and responding to requests. And inside OpenID Connect attributes, you can see a client ID, which is our client ID from Okta, and client secret, the same as from our client secret from Okta. And we have also a service discovery endpoint for identity provider as Okta. You can specify your own domain from Okta account that we created application. You can also provide a scope of resources to be accessed. Bear only false option to just validate access token that is expected to be present in the request header. When it's set to false, this option convenient to support the web browser interaction with endpoints, let's say so the human user that may still need to be authenticated when accessing for the first time, or when it set to true, it is more appropriate for service-to-service communication. In our case, we are as a human user, we are going to trigger the identity provider, so the web browser, so it's set to false. Realm attribute specifies authenticate response header authentication information. By default, it's APISIX. We can specify, for example, the APISIX or master, and finally the redirect URI, which is when we try to hit the endpoint to which redirect URI that we are specifying. For more specific configuration items, you can refer to the Apache APISIX OpenID Connect Plugin documentation. Basically, what we're doing here, we are specifying the route configuration as if any URI match the following criteria, all the calls should be thrown to the upstream nodes. In our case, we have one node with a simple backend service, HTTP bin org. If hit and press enter to run this curl command, you can see the response from admin API as successful, and now with the simple steps we configured OpenID plugin, let's say OpenID Connect plugin for API for the Okta and with the APISIX integration. Now, for example, if we visit the page through the browser, let's say on our browser, if you do HTTP with a host GET request, this request should be redirected to the Okta login page, because OpenID Connect plugin is now on enabled. Yeah, here we go. And after you enter your credentials and sign in, you will get the following the output. As you can see, the page the request returned with a set of additional headers like X-access token or ID token and user info. In this scenario, X-access token that APISIX puts token obtained from user provider, and in our case the Okta, and passes ID token and user info together to the upstream, and our upstream or our server should be able to handle these header information. Most frequently we need to get on the service side to get resources, user information. On the later stages, the upstream can parse these headers to get the user ID information or user metadata. Until now, we have shown the process of building a centralized identity authentication from Okta directly into the Apache APISIX gateway. It's easy to sign up for free Okta developer account to get started. Our approach for sure reduces developer overhead and enables a safe and streamlined experience. If you would like to learn more about OpenID Connect plugin or other authentication plugins, you can visit OpenID Connect plugin webpage. It can be also used for other identity providers beside Okta, like you can use it for the Azure Active Directory as identity provider, or you can use also for the Cognito as an identity provider. If you have questions, additional how to set up the authentication plugins, you can feel free to join also our community, reach out us by mailing list, or you can join our Slack channel. Together with the smartest contributors, you will have opportunity to work with Apache APISIX, the world's most active open source API gateway. Come in, join this active and diverse community. Let's bring more efficient and powerful things to the world. Thanks.